Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I know during this lockdown, everyone suddenly seems to be a runner if you look out of your window, but at the time of recording this episode, here in the UK, we are allowed to leave the house once a day for exercise. So I have been getting up at 6 a.m. and going for a 3-mile run just to keep cabin fever at bay. But man, I am not good at getting up in the morning, and I am a slow and steady kind of guy, and motivating myself to do it has been incredibly hard. But I've got to tell you, I feel so much better, and since January the 1st, I've now lost 20 pounds. Not 20 pounds in money, in weight, so it's all good. But more than anything, it does make a difference just clearing my head each morning. But I'll let you into a secret. I am planning on treating myself to some chocolate Easter eggs while you're listening to this episode today. But please, keep your stories of how you're dealing with lockdown wherever you are by sending me a quick email, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Now, as regular listeners will know, I'm passionate about sharing tech stories from all over the world and not just the Bay Area over in the US. And I think we must have spoken with people in close to 100 countries right now. But today, I want to share my first tech story from Cyprus, because today's guest is Nikolas Kairinos from Fountech.AI, and they recently surveyed 2,000 UK consumers to assess their attitudes towards artificial intelligence, and the results are striking. Most notably, over a fifth of consumers would trust AI to handle political negotiations over politicians. But 32% of consumers still think AI is danger. But 32% of consumers are still worried that AI could be a danger to society. Now, the report that we're talking about here was featured heavily in the media. So I invited him on the podcast today to discuss the findings of that research in greater detail, as well as the future of AI in general. And thankfully, he said yes. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Cyprus so we can speak with Nikolas Kairinos, founder and CEO of Fountech.AI. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Well, thanks for having me, Neil. So I run a business called Fountech. I've been in AI for a number of decades now. What Fountech does essentially is it's involved in a number of businesses that have various things to do with AI. So we do research and trying to develop AI beyond where it is currently. We do consulting and development for clients. We also recently launched an incubator. The management team doesn't like calling it an incubator because it's so much more. But the idea is that we help AI-centric companies grow from literally just an idea through to an established Series B company that's well on its way to achieving success.
And I suspect that you must get frustrated with the amount of people using artificial intelligence. What is AI and what isn't AI? Because you've actually been working in artificial intelligence in that space for over 30 years now. So I'm curious, how have you seen this space evolve?
Well, yeah, interesting. It certainly has evolved. There's been a lot of false starts. So there'll be a lot of research into certain approaches and methods, and the media would hype it up and everyone would get excited and then would try and build applications on the back of the technology at the time, and then realize that it wasn't scalable, didn't really meet up to its promises. So then it would die out again. So interest would wane and investment would wane. And to an extent, other than doing my own research, I'd have to keep myself busy with other things. But the last decade has been a turning point. We're at a point where I don't believe we're going to have another winter unless there isn't enough research going into AI. So I think this is when we're going to see it take off. We're at the knee of an inflection point for sure.
And you are focused on developing novel AI solutions to make the world a better place. And I think that's the kind of story that we need to hear right now. So what is the story behind this passion for using tech to make a difference? I feel there's got to be a story there. Where did it all begin?
There is, absolutely. So it wasn't always the case. So, I grew up being a nerd, and it was all about the technology for technology's sake for the longest time. And, we built some amazing stuff that I was really proud of, but it was more proud of it from a technical, logical, sort of philosophical perspective, not really, is this really making a difference? And a few years ago, I was having coffee with a friend. This was in 2017. And he said, well, this is really interesting, but is what you're doing really making a difference? And we sort of went back and forth, and where that conversation ended up taking us is that he said, well, why don't you try and use AI to fix education? Education is broken. It's developed for a period, a century ago. It hasn't really moved with the times. The one-to-many model of educating doesn't really work. How could AI be used to fix this? And that was an aha moment for me, not just from the education perspective, but I realized how excited that got me and how passionate I became. I got involved in a project, and I'd never experienced that level of passion. And I thought, okay, well, from now on, to the extent possible, given that we are living in a world and we do have bills to pay and so on, but to the extent possible, we're only going to get involved in projects that are impactful, that are going to make a difference in people's lives around the world, because I believe AI is the great democratizer in many ways. And that's the mission, ultimately, is to use it for that purpose.
And here in 2020, of course, Fountech specialize in applied artificial intelligence, integrating AI to revolutionize all your clients' businesses. But can you just bring everyone up to speed listening or probably hearing about you guys for the first time on the kind of problems that you're solving for businesses right now?
Right. They are wide and varied. I'll give you some examples. For one, we're doing a lot of work in the corporate learning and development field, because again, it ties into the whole education angle. So corporate L&D is a big pain point in companies. We're living in a time of knowledge explosion. The knowledge is changing so quickly, and forcing employees to kind of go through these programs, it's not working. People are bored. They're not doing them. They're doing them to the extent necessary to just tick a box. So we're doing a lot of work in trying to bring sort of conversational agents to corporate learning and development. So you have an avatar on your phone, on your desktop, in your car, wherever, that as an employee, you could just ask any question about anything that you need to know about, whether it relates to policy or products. That's one example. We're also working with law firms to do things like automate contract preparation, contract review, sort of acting as a legal research assistant. We're working with companies to build research assistants that sort of automate research, and it goes on and on. Neil, I could use the whole hour just to talk about the types of applications, but it's really, if you want to sort of put a wrapper around it, it's all about making companies and employees more effective, efficient, reducing costs, and so on and so forth.
And one of the reasons that I first heard about you guys was when you hit the headlines with the results from one of your surveys. I think it was around 2,000 UK consumers investigating the public trust of AI, and it appeared in all the newspapers over here. But the results were quite striking. But for anyone that missed that, can you just tell me a little bit more about the survey and who you asked?
Yeah, so basically we wanted to know the extent to which consumers trusted AI in different areas. So we served a series of questions relating to how they would trust AI in certain situations, to try and get a sense, not just what people collectively felt or how they understood AI, but to see how that varied across age and so on and so forth. And the results were really interesting.
They really were. I mean, I think over 22% of consumers said that they would trust AI to handle political negotiations such as Brexit over politicians. I mean, did that surprise you?
Somewhat. I mean, I think that the percentage would have been different if the question related to overall political negotiations rather than just Brexit. I think obviously there's a lot of it had to do with the fact that it related specifically to Brexit and how a large percentage of the population didn't trust politicians at the time to handle Brexit.
I also read that more than a quarter would trust AI to care for an elderly relative. Can you expand on that? Because that feels more poignant than ever right in the current climate.
Well, yeah, look, the UK social care system is stretched, right? I mean, we're reading anecdotal evidence. There's articles daily about how AI as a conversational agent and as an assistant, a home assistant, is able to help the elderly and make them feel that someone's there that they can talk to, have them read a book to them, and so on and so forth. So it didn't surprise me. I've been seeing that trend coming, and I think that percentage is going to increase, especially as AI and conversational agents and knowledge graphs and so on become better and better, so that it feels like you have someone there that you can talk to and actually help you. So, you know, whether there's an emergency, it's great to have AI in the home that you can speak to, and it can detect when there's a certain emergency, or you could just say, look, I need these medicines, or I need X, and it's able to take care of that for you. So we're going to see more and more of that for sure.
And the only weak spot I can see on that landscape at the moment is the lack of AI education and how that could affect future tech developments. Is that something that you're seeing, and can you expand on that?
Yes. So, you know, dystopian fantasies abound when it comes to AI, largely because of movies and how the consumer's been miseducated. And a lot of people, you know, even speaking to innovation managers at large corporations, Neil, you'll see that there's a big gap in understanding of what AI really is. You know, we'll speak to companies, for instance, and I'll get to consumers in a second, which the survey dealt with, but I'll speak to companies and they'll say, yeah, you know, we need AI. There's a lot of push by our board and shareholders for us to be using AI. And they expect us to almost come in with something that's like Alexa that they can talk to, and they want to see what it does. And it somehow is able to magically take care of everything, which is not how AI works. So there's a big gap in understanding of what AI is across the board. Consumers, I think a lot of the fears that we see stem from the fact that it's a fear of the unknown. They don't really know what AI is, but yet they're using it in their daily lives, whether they're getting directions on Google Maps or you know, speaking to Alexa about something. AI is pretty much everywhere, and it's going to be more and more so the case. And I think over time, people will understand that, okay, it's not this thing that's going to come in and take over, but it's a technology that can improve everything a little bit and then a little bit more, and will make our lives better over a period of time. So I'm hoping that happens sooner rather than later.
And of course, that education piece is further muddied by the amount of new solutions that are arriving every day. And they're all promising AI, but very often don't have AI in them.
Yes.
What's the best way for businesses to spot what is AI and what isn't out there?
Look, AI is a very, very broad term.
Yeah.
So we've had you know, statistics-driven models and so on for many, many, many years. Now, a lot of people will put that into a category of AI. You know, we refer to it as good old-fashioned AI. It's not really AI. For something to be regarded as being machine learning and deep learning, it's got to learn from lots and lots of examples, improve over time with or without human supervision or reinforcement. If it's purely algorithmic and the system is not learning on its own and improving on its own over time, then it really isn't AI. And then you have another level of AI, which if you imagine AI as this large circle, Now, within that circle, you have a tiny circle that is a subset of AI, which is what represents the state of the art today, which is machine learning, deep learning, neural network based systems. That is where we are today. That is the state of the art. AI is this massive ocean of uncharted waters that we still haven't truly understood or discovered. It's very, very much a nascent technology, even though it's been around for 80 plus years. Just to some extent, or we've been talking about it and thinking about it for that period of time.
And AI will inevitably change the world as we know it, but it does feel like we're overcoming our fear that it's just going to replace us and replace our jobs. Do you think the secret is this hybrid approach with AI in collaboration with humans? And because that feels it's crucial to making real progress, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a very big proponent of that, and that's very much part of the approach we take. So philosophically, our approach is that when it comes to important decisions, and important defined by the economic impact on people's lives, AI should not be allowed to make that decision. So it should become a mechanism that crunches the numbers, analyzes all the options, presents that to human decision makers, allowing them to make the decision. Now, when it's things that don't really have a big economic impact or are not risking anyone's life, etc., then that's fine to allow AI to make those decisions. So that collaboration is something that we're doing a lot of work around. And to truly have that enable the next generation of AI, we have to develop technology that bridges the divide and the gap between artificial intelligence, the machine, and human intelligence, the brain. Right now, it's no use if AI has to spend an hour explaining the options and the analysis to a human for them to make a decision, because sometimes decisions need to be made a lot quicker. So a lot of the research we're doing, and a lot of the thinking I do, is around how do we speed up that communication cycle? So, almost like cracking the neural code in a sense, where you can send a series of electrical impulses that the human understands and is able to send the same back, and the machine then says, right, this is the decision I need to make. So that's where you bring in emotion, ethics, bias, or the removal of bias at least, from decisions. By having humans in the loop, we've just got to figure out how do we combine them in a way that enables quick, effective decisions.
And before I let you go, one of the things I love doing on this podcast is speaking to a different guest from somewhere in the world every single day. And we all know all about the Silicon Valley stories and the west coast of the US there. But you're talking to me in Cyprus today. And I'm curious, is there a tech scene in Cyprus? Are startups beginning to thrive over there?
Well, it is growing. So our business is primarily active in the States, specifically in Austin, Texas, and then in London. Our science team sits in Cyprus. And Cyprus has a very highly educated population. A lot of people have master's degrees and PhDs, and they're not working in the areas that they studied. So you'll get people with PhDs effectively working in a bank or doing something that is outside their field of study. So our idea is to try and employ as many of these PhD and master level students and bring them into AI, and hence us having set up our science base here in Cyprus.
Fantastic. And finally, can I just ask that you remind everyone listening where they can find you guys online and contact your team if they do have any additional questions after listening to our conversation today?
Absolutely. So our website is Fountech, which is Fountech.AI. Easy way to remember that is it's Fountain Technologies combined. So it's Fountech.ai, and my email address is nick@Fountech.ai.
Well, I'll add all those links to the blog posts that will accompany this podcast, just so people can find you nice and easily. I love what you're doing here, and I love this collaborative hybrid approach that you're speaking of as well. It's such a great way forward. And I agree with what we were saying before we started recording as well, how the world is going to completely change on the other side of this global pandemic. So I'd love to get you back on when we're on that other side and see just how much has changed. But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Neil. I'd love to be back.
Nikolas is a firm believer that man and machine should collaborate to maximise each other's skill sets. So I cannot thank him enough for explaining why businesses should learn to adopt this attitude, especially if they are serious about remaining relevant and competitive over the coming years. And although Nikolas did admit that the results in that report that we were talking about were somewhat conflicting, because on one hand, consumers appear willing to trust the ruthless rationality and efficiency of AI when working on certain tasks. However, the fear of AI still remains rife. And there does still seem to be that knowledge gap. And I think much of that is to do with the way the majority of consumers out there, and I include myself in this, see AI and how it's represented in films and television series. So maybe more work needs to be done there to ensure that that is accurate. Because it seems that any TV show or movie, when it comes to technology or future, it's always dystopia, isn't it? There's never anything positive. In fact, I read a great book recently talking about that, and they were saying that any book about the future and technology, or any piece of entertainment, it's always dystopian. And the only example that the author could think of that wasn't was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That was the only positive film that they could think about. So I'll throw that over to you. Can you think of any film or TV show that you've watched that offered a positive vision of the future and the impacts of technology and how it will make our life better? So I'm saying to you, there is only Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But please, if you can think of a film or any TV show right now, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, because AI will inevitably change the world as we know it. But I don't think it will be in a threatening way that so many people assume. I mean, in reality, AI is a useful tool that offers countless benefits to humans. But I think we must remember that the full potential of artificial intelligence can only be achieved in collaboration with humans. And that's why myself and Nikolas are optimistic that by entering into such a partnership, humans and AI will be able to move forward and forge a productive partnership. But over to you. Did you find today's conversation set off a few light bulb moments? If they did, don't banish them. I want you to let it out and share them with me and everyone listening by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You go to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, scroll to the bottom, you'll find all the social channels that you can find me on as well, and send me a quick direct message. And I was serious. I want to know films that depict a positive image of the future and positive impacts of technology. Answers on a postcard or the back of a sealed down envelope, or just send me a direct message. So thanks for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.